All right. So I've come to the conclusion that I am not a very interesting sounding speaker, but that's all right. Anyways, getting back into before, gonna start off with envy, flavor text, eternal oozing jealousy. I think that covers it pretty well, and let's just get right into it. So, I should put this closer. Okay, envy zero. Top effect, nothing. Middle effect, delete the top card of your opponent's stack in this line until that amount of cards matches the amount in your stack. This is pretty cut and dry, simple. It's not going to work it's not going to work super well early game, just because of how things put out. If it's like one card and one card, it won't do anything. If your opponent more like middle and late game has like 5 cards in the line or something, and you only have 1 or 2, that's where it really starts to hit home. So this is a bit more late game in design. I think a few other protocols kind of take the opposite approach, where they want to really get you stuff early, and some are pretty balanced throughout. This one is really kind of holding off until the end, and then it really makes its value known. Now, NV1. If your opponent has more cards in this line than you do, your opponent cannot play cards in this line. Again, envy really basing off the idea of, right, like you're envious of your opponent. You don't like what they have. You kind of want that for yourself in a sense, or you're just really putting off what they can do because it reflects badly on you. Now, this is another one where you're comparing the amount of cards they have in the line. In this case, instead of reducing those, you're just making it so flat out they can't play. I frankly think this is a slightly better card than NV0. And sometimes that happens. Sometimes a 1 is a little bit better than a 0 card. It really just depends on how you're going to play it, and that'll manifest in the use you get out of it. For someone who likes to play very control dominant, I think this is better. For someone who's a bit more aggressive in their strategies, I think the 0 is overall a more effective card. NV2, flip one of your opponent's cards. Now this is kind of a standard flip card. The downside is it's actually slightly worse, just because really it specifies opponent card. And there could be a lot of situations where you're like, oh, I have a flip card to flip something on your own side. And then you realize, wait, it's my opponent. Flips only my opponent's stuff. That doesn't help me, and that's not super useful. So kind of your standard flip, but a little bit worse, just to offset some of the 0 and the 1. NV3, delete one of your opponent's cards with a value of 2 or 3. Now, I really like these kind of cards where it's like delete a certain value. Death has one of these. I think it's the 2 and the 4. The 4 is kind of my inspiration for this more so, because it's delete one card with a value of 0 or 1. And I wanted to change that up a little bit, because I think it's a bit boring to repeat the exact same kind of cards over and over. And in my perception here, I'm including 2. Any sort of 2 card is obviously really, really good, because face down cards, value of 2, always good, always good. But then sometimes you want to get rid of 3s. Like I can see this being really good against fire. What are some other good 3 cards? I don't know. I could see this being all right against like. Anyways, you get the point. You get the point. Some 3 cards are really annoying. And you potentially would want to get rid of them, either if they have an end effect like fire, or if they just re-trigger really annoyingly. Say if you had like plague, you don't want someone to re-trigger that. Could be annoying for you. So just getting that out of the way right there could also be useful. NV4, when your opponent draws cards, reveal what cards they drew. Now, obviously, this is not great, but I think it plays in super, super well to the theme of envy, right? You're really, really jealous of your opponent. You want to know what they have. You almost crave that. You need it. And in this case, I think it's really interesting. It's not the entirety of what they have, but it's seeing any sort of new things that happen with their deck. Their hand. So if they refresh, you get to see all of those new cards they got. If they draw a card or 2, you get to see those. You don't necessarily see their full hand, but the interesting thing there is, right, like, if you were paying attention well enough, you could theoretically know all the cards in their hand, eventually, if they just cycle through enough. And I think that's kind of an interesting idea. And lastly, just classic NV5. You know the drill. I don't need to get into this. Next one is Famine. Flavor text going to be Cold Opposition. And this one is fun to me. That was just a little bit thematic, so I threw it in there. And moving on. So Famine's huge idea really is causing harm both to your opponent and yourself through a variety of different, ways of the game and its mechanics. Famine 0 is probably the best by a decent margin, because if you'll notice that top effect, your opponent's hand size is reduced to 3. Yeah, not 5, not 4, 3, and that's really gonna hurt him. Additionally, yeah, as if that wasn't enough already, your opponent discards 1 card, so they're actually operating in that moment on a hand size of 2. That's ridiculous. Maybe a little too ridiculous, but the way I see this is you almost need to, if your opponent were, sorry, how do I phrase? If the person you're playing against were to take Famine, you almost need just a very direct counter pick to this at all times. Um, I think obviously flipping it is going to be very effective. Deleting it's going to be effective. Other than that, you might be sort of out of luck. And you really just gotta see what you can manage to work around with that. Famine 1. Alright, so end, you may discard 1 card. If you do, your opponent discards 1 card. Now, on its own, this really isn't that great. It can be kind of nice if your opponent's running on a low hand size, so you have the 0 already out there. That's pretty good. Now, the real thing of this is it comes in synergy with another Famine card later on. And I guess you could maybe use this to like cycle bad cards out of your deck, or sorry, out of your hand. Dang it. But that's about all you can really. That's all the functionality I could really find with this. It's definitely it's making up for how good the 0 is with how relatively not good this one is. All right, Famine 2. Delete your highest value covered or uncovered card on the board, and then your opponent does the same. Now, this is good if you've planned for it well, because say you only have like a 3 or a 2 on the board or something, that gets out of there. Say your opponent has like a 5, a 6, or whatever, they gotta ditch that, and that can really suck for them. Furthermore, you could maybe use this to re-trigger some stuff. That's always nice. So this is a very tactical card in that sense. I will say though, it suffers with kind of Hate has a card somewhat like this, and it suffers with the same problem that it might just delete itself, and then the effect doesn't happen. So another one where it's really not that great. You gotta plan for it pretty well, and it obviously is detrimental to you and your opponent. Ideally, more so your opponent. You just gotta really think about that when you're using it. All right, Famine 3. Now this is the synergy one that kind of brings Famine all together. When you or your opponent discards cards, draw 1 card. Now that is kind of huge. It means Famine actually is doing a high amount of draw for you, and if your opponent needs to counter anything in this deck besides the 0, it's absolutely going to beat this 3. This works for a whole variety of situations. Famine itself, besides the 1, actually doesn't have a whole lot of discard in it, so I think that's pretty notable. Obviously this pairs well with the 1, but you do need to get this out and then the 1 on top of it, or just get them in different lines. The main thing here to think about is this will apply when your opponent plays 5s as well. So they'll play that, they'll have to discard, and then you get to draw a card, and it's a bit like Plague 1, except tuned even higher. But that fits in a bit thematically with Plague, or sorry, not Plague, Famine, because you are kind of wheeling your own deck as well as your opponent's. So there's a consideration there. You're definitely losing out, but you want them to lose out more. That's the whole point of it, really. All right. Oh, that's supposed to say Famine. Apologies. Just standard 5 though. Nothing huge about that. And then Famine 6. Discard the top card of your deck or delete this card. Now, there's actually some benefit to this, obviously. Discard is pretty huge if you have the 3 out, because you're going to be drawing. If not, that just does kind of suck for you. And obviously, you might just have to straight up delete your 6. You could use that for re-triggers, but it's still not great. I'm thinking of revising some of the stuff in Famine because it is a bit overtuned. I might just play around with how to make that 0 work out a bit better. Or I'm thinking I might affect how the 3 works, just because right now it is pretty overtuned. But we'll see how that goes. I might just change the 3 to be when you discard cards, so like yourself, because I think that has a more interesting and cohesive mix with the overall cards in this, but also making it a little less broken than right now it's kind of coming off as. So I forget what I have up next. Oh yeah, so for some of these, I couldn't think of one best name for them, so they kind of are split. If anyone has any ideas, let me know, and I will either adapt the name to fit with those, or I will just choose whichever name is more popular. In this one, we have dust and or sand. I'm still kind of waffling between the two. And flavor text is slip through the cracks. Now, this is a fun one, but I'm going to do it next time. So, until then, this is the custom card series, and I still, unfortunately, do not know how to end these. So that'll be it.